Good afternoon, everyone. Let's go ahead and get a quick mic check. If you don't mind, just a quick hello or mic check, or if you want to say a rhyme or two, you're welcome to do that, or a few bars of a rap. But we just need to check our audio.
Hello.
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 Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we'll wait just a few seconds for others to join, and then we will begin. Okay, I think we are ready. It is 1 o'clock, so we will begin. Before we do, Haiti, do you have some things for us as we begin our session?
Yes, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm still a little offbeat here. I am so glad to see so many of you on video. If you can join the video, that would be awesome because we are going to be doing this on video now from here on out until the last session that we have. I do see somebody on the phone, so if it's you and like on the phone and on the computer, let me know. Other than that, that's all I got. Back to you, Clary.
Okay. Thank you, Haiti. Okay, a couple of things on my end as far as just some ground rules as we're proceeding. So as you can see, things are a little different now that we can see each other. So we've progressed a little bit from the first and the second session. This session being one where we are going to be slightly more vulnerable. And it's going to seem, I just want to go ahead and warn you a little bit, it's going to seem a little bit like group therapy today and next week, but that's okay because there's some things that we need to process as we figure out the best way for us to lead forward. So don't worry about that with regards to how things are going and how we're going to be sharing today. It's a part of the process. It's a part of the process. If for some reason you want to say something at the same time someone else is, and maybe I didn't hear one of you, and then I start to move on, by all means, raise your hand, use the little tool here on Zoom to raise your hand, and then that way we can acknowledge you. Someone will see that your hand is raised, and we won't move beyond your contribution, because as you know, this has been designed for us all to make a contribution. That's the only way that this session, that this course, that these sessions work. Also, we want you to participate in all of the discussions that we're having now. The verbal discussions are very valuable because they kind of lead us towards where we're hoping to go. The verbal discussions kind of let us know, oh, do we need to spend a little bit more time on this portion of bias or that portion of bias? So that helps us. We will be, as best we can, monitoring the chat, so you can feel free to participate in the chat. But as I ask questions, we want all of these things to be on record. Again, this is just the record for us to design things best for you once the sessions are over with. We want to know how we can best equip you when this is all over with. So the overarching theme for today and next week, and really going forward, but the overarching theme is for you to help me and to help us, the Anthem leadership, Haiti, etc., to figure out the best way to resource you so that you can check your biases going forward. What do I mean? Here's my one quick example. Remember, we've been using this analogy of driving in a car and having blind spots. And so if you change lanes, you better check your blind spot, or else you can cause great harm to yourself, the people that are in your automobile, as well as to others, right? You all remember that? Little head nod. Okay, so what I'm suggesting is for the next couple of weeks, this week and next week, we want you to tell us, and this is going to be your homework for next week specifically, but we want you to tell us what you need in your automobile in order for you to be able to assess your blind spot and navigate that well without causing accidents. So in real life, you may suggest, hey, I learn by books, or I learn by podcast. I learn by, I like watching Netflix. So do you have anything on Netflix that you can share with us, like docuseries or something like that? Once you let us know, then that's wonderful. But it's not just you. We want you to think about the people that are in your sphere of influence, perhaps even kids or others that you have interpersonal relationships with that, maybe a little bit of a sticking point. How can they best learn so that they can check their blind spots? Okay, so if you've got a friend of yours that, let's just say a family member. Let's say you have a family member that you obviously this is family. So there's an old saying that blood is thicker than water. And the last thing that I want to do is disassociate myself with them, but they say some things that are not helpful. And because I'm in a relationship with them, I've got to make a decision to either disavow every one of their little tasteless jokes, or, I've got to, kind of grin and bear it. I don't want to do that. So what can I do, Clary? Well, what you need to let us know is, what are the types of things that they enjoy receiving, reviewing? Do they watch television? Do they read books? Do they go on social media, et cetera, et cetera? And then that will help me figure out how I can best resource you, not just for yourself, but for the people that are in your sphere. Does that make sense? Go ahead and unmute if you have a question or a comment regarding that. It's pretty important that we understand that, hey, we need to resource you and, maybe a couple of the folks that are in your little stratosphere. All right. So with that said, we're going to pick up today where we left off last time. Remember, we wanted to digest and process the doll test. We showed that at the end of our last session. It's a little bit of a provocative little exercise. We're going to show that again. We're not showing it for the purpose of putting it in your face again, because this course is not meant to be offensive, but we know that there are some offending things that we have to address. So here's the permission. If you need to kind of look away for 2 minutes and 14 seconds, or if you just need to kind of zone out for a second because it was too offensive, you are welcome to do that. But just for 2 minutes and 14 seconds. On the other end of showing this, again, we're just showing it as a refresher. On the other end of this, then we want to come back together and kind of engage, because I want to hear what your thoughts are after you've had an opportunity to digest. We all good? All right, let me go ahead and play that now.
Quale bambola è bianca? Quale bambola è nera? Quale delle due è bella?
Questa.
Qual è quella bella? Qual è quella brutta? E qual è quella buona? Quale è cattiva? Qual è buona? Perché è buona?
Perché ha gli occhi celesti.
Quale è cattiva? Perché è cattiva?
Perché è tutto nero.
E qual è la bambola che ti somiglia di più? Quale bambola è nera?
È offeso.
Chi?
Tu.
Perché?
Perché mi hai chiamato nero.
Perché ti offendo?
Mi offendi perché altri bambini mi hanno offeso con cattiveria.
No, io non ho usato nessuna cattiveria.
Quello mi sta guardando storto.
Okay. What are your thoughts there? Particularly as it relates to bias.
This is Michelle. I think it's devastating that any child would look at a doll, even if it looks like them, and think that it's ugly. It's devastating.
I also felt like, this is Angela, I also felt like it was very sad because they basically told the children because your skin is that color, because they all pointed to the same doll, that they were bad and ugly.
And Angela, would you mind just saying that one more time? It was a little bit muffled. I apologize.
I said it was sad to me because I felt like all the children, when they asked them which one looked like them, they all pointed to the black doll, and they had it was sad because they already told them that they were bad and ugly.
Yeah.
And to watch those children struggle with that because they were forced to say, hey, I'm dark and I'm ugly and I'm bad.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that to me, it seems like the darker skinned children noticed what choice they had made and what that meant after it was brought up. I feel like maybe if they had never participated in this, they never would have realized like what that internal thought is. Because after they made all the choices, then they started to seem more sad. So I think that was interesting.
So India, let me just make sure I'm understanding that perspective. Thank you for sharing. So you feel as though there's the possibility that if they had not been faced with having to make a choice, that they would not have perhaps come to a realization that, wait a second, this is bad and this is good. They could have just continued in their life just seeing kids as kids.
Maybe.
Or dolls as dolls.
Or they probably would have, come to that realization later on in life but I think them being presented at it now or at the age that they were realizing what they're internalizing because they were able to see it outside of themselves.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I made this comment. It's Amber.
Hey.
I just turn my camera back on. My child was running around. I think I've seen several different videos. I think there's ones with younger children. These kids kind of seem school age to me, maybe starting school age, and they seem a little confused. And it's almost like they know that it's not right what they're saying, but they're trying to conform maybe to societal views and what they're hearing in school. I don't know, because I've seen videos with younger children, they don't know a difference. They just don't. But these seem to be maybe early kindergarten, first graders. And that's really when our children start to get exposed to other people's views and opinions. And unfortunately, society's views may not be what we want it to be.
Yeah.
I noticed that it seemed like when they were forced to make that choice, they had a look of pain in their faces. You know, it was painful to watch, but when you see their faces, they had pain on their face. Like it wasn't an easy decision to have to say, well, this is a dark skinned doll and this is the one that's bad, or this is the one that's ugly, but which one looks like you? And they would hesitate and then point to the darker skinned doll, you know, like it wasn't an easy decision.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, just on top of what she just said, there was almost like a reluctance to pick on that last one, that they knew that was the answer that was expected, I think, and they were reluctant, but they knew that's what they were going to pick, and it was painful to see them to kind of go. There was a hesitance, that reluctancy to go that route, even though they may not have fully felt that.
Yeah. And what a thank you, Amber and Jeff for sharing that, and Terry, and everyone who's shared, India, you as well. What an internal wrestling it must be when it's almost like you can see the pain on their face when it's like, whoa. Even though they didn't say it, it was, this one looks more like me. Yeah. Other thoughts there? And I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. It's not necessary for you to share in the chat, but if you don't share in the chat, then I will presume it's okay. That you don't mind sharing verbally, so I can call on you if we get to that point. So just to be clear, if you do not want me to call on you, because I know some of us are a little bit more bashful, I'm an introvert myself, then feel free to put your perspective in the chat, and then I will refrain from calling on you. Okay. I'm not asking you not to talk. I'm just saying that's another option for you.
Hi, this is Gay. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, Gay. Go right ahead.
That video was painful to watch. And it was really an eye opener because I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm married. I'm Filipino, my skin's brown. I'm married to a white man, and when you look at my kids, you really can't tell they're mixed, and they identify themselves as purely white as well. And it's just weird because I do kind of, since she started school this year, kindergarten, I do kind of notice that behavior on her since she started school. When she plays with dolls, I observe her, like we have, white colored dolls, and then others that are, brown colored. They have a set. And the white skinned or lighter skinned doll would always be the princess, the good one, and then the other one would be evil. And when she refers to me, even my own child, she denies that I'm brown skin. And I talked to her about it, and she's like, "No, mommy, you're white." I'm like, "No, look, I'm brown." It's painful, it's sad, and I don't know, we just keep trying to talk to her about it, but um it's happening. It's here, and it's sad.
Thank you for sharing. Yay, just a quick question. Do you believe that she has potentially, I'm not putting words in your mouth or thoughts in her head for sure, but I'm just asking this question. Do you believe that there's a possibility that she has associated you with being good and also white with being good, And so because you're good, she knows that you're good, then you must be white. Do you think that that's a possibility?
It could be possibly because we really don't know how she got to that. It's just we know it started this year. And this year she started school. So
I'm going to share some things unfortunate. This is the part that I hate about session 3. I'm going to share some things that are going to expose where some of this may come from. So today is going to be a lot of what is going on. Next week, we're going to deconstruct why it's going on. And then, between the 2 sessions, you all are going to share with me how we can best resource you so that you can navigate, these potholes and blind spots, et cetera. I think I saw a hand. I'm not sure. Was it you, Lanice? Okay, great. Go right ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Gay said. I I'm a new mother, but before I became a mother, I did a lot of research and I actually helped raise my niece too. She's an African American little girl, and we actually live in Avon, Indiana. So it is mostly white. So she does go to school with mostly white kids and maybe 1 or 2 white kids, Black kids in her class. But what we're getting out here is mostly a lot of parents, white parents adopt Black kids out here. So it's kind of like that weirdness of it's an African American kid, but they're kind of raised they're raised with Caucasian parents. With that being said, I'll wrap it up really fast. When I did have my daughter, I know that the bias of like thinking that your brown skin is bad comes with being an African American child growing up. So what I've done a lot of research is you have to watch what you expose your child to. So my child being 1, this is some of the things that I do. I am very, very critical of what she sees on TV. And if it's not something that looks like her, I don't expose her to it. With that being said, she doesn't see anybody that's Caucasian on TV. She doesn't watch anything that puts Black people in a bad light. So for a long time with the Disney princesses, you have to think about Disney Plus. Most of the princesses were white to start off with. The only Black princess that we really have is Tiana, and I will put Moana in that category. So that's the only 2 she watches. I just started exposing her to other princesses, but I'm very cognitive in watching what she sees because I don't want her to think that only white people can be beautiful. They can sing, they can have long hair and beautiful hair. So I make sure that she only sees Black people in a good light. With that being said, she only watches Sesame Street. They show African Americans on Sesame Street. They're Muppet characters. They have a diverse population on Sesame Street. I don't let her watch certain shows that maybe just only show white people. Coco Melon. Coco Melon is like a kid's like baby show. It only shows white babies. So I'm very cognizant of what I show her. I don't know if I feel like it may do her a lot better with growing up because she'll see Black people on TV. She'll know that we can also be on TV, cartoons, and it's not just the white princess, Snow White, Cinderella. So I do that because of things like that, those exercises like that, because I know that can happen, that a Black child can, at age 5 or 6, can hate their hair, hate their skin color. It comes very, very early. And I've seen it happen to a lot of my friends' kids, people I work with, like I've seen that happen. So I'm very, very cognizant of what I like give to her and show her, because I think that's where it streams from. She's not in school right now, but I definitely know that's where it comes from.
Okay. Am I pronouncing your name correct? Is it Lanice?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Lanice, thank you for sharing that. If you don't mind, I have a few questions just as a follow-up. I believe some people would think that and I'm just giving a perspective, okay? I believe that some people might think that that is a little bit extreme, okay? But that's okay. I'm not judging. This is a judgment-free thing. I'm just suggesting that some people may think that. So I want to give you the opportunity to share with us. Again, would you let me know what is her age? 1 year old. Okay. And then can you just, and then what type of work do you do for Anthem?
I'm a social worker for
You're a
Anthem.
social worker. So what does that mean? In
As far as what?
yeah, like day to day, like what's, one or two things that you actually have to do on your day to day as a social
I
worker?
call members and outreach members, high utilizers, people that need resources, things like that, within Anthem.
Yeah. And is it possible, just maybe one or two other questions, is it possible that if your daughter has a negative experience that that can alter, it's not supposed to, but that can alter how you're feeling that day, which can bleed over into your job? It's not supposed to, and I know you're professional and you don't mix the two, but I mean you're a human being. So if your daughter receives a negative image and you've got to deal with that, is it possible that that could bleed into the type of work that you're doing as you're interacting with others?
I guess with the job that I'm doing now, maybe not. My past work, I worked in social services. I think that would kind of bleed over because I was working in social services. So that made me really protective of her. So that kind of did bleed over. I took work like home, but now it's kind of more of a not as hard as what I was doing, not as stressful, I guess. As far as like the extreme, I think as a Black parent, everything has to be to the extreme because the times we lived in. We have a lot of negative images that are happening right now. We have things, we have George Floyd trial that's going on right now with the jury selection. And I know one day she is going to see that. And I know that I have to be hard on her as far as like what she sees and what negative images she sees of us. So I think being a Black parent, it's tough, period.
Yeah.
So being hard on them now helps them later, because I have to think about is one day I'm going to have the talk with her. So, so I don't think me being extreme as far as what she sees on TV is like even like a touch of what's to come of me raising her, because being a Black parent is already tough.
Thank you very much. Obviously, this is a judgment-free zone, and people raise their children how they best believe they should raise their children. So, I mean, I don't have any kids. I don't. I'm not in a position to be able to suggest if it's good or bad. But what do you hear when you hear Lanice sharing that? Again, it's not a judgment on this is good or bad, but what does that make you feel that she has to go that route? Go right ahead, Terry.
Go ahead, Terry.
I understand it. And one word that you said that stuck in my mind was extreme, but I feel like as parents, we have to be extreme, especially in today's society. And, I'm not sure that that's the right way or the wrong way, but I can see that beginning, and I don't know if this is your frame of thought, Lanice, but when you can maybe solidify that confidence as early as possible, and then kind of open it up and say, okay, now we'll lay you out and see what's really happening. But I think that's key. I think, I grew up in the 70s and it was different. And my son, who just turned 22, I think, 22, he just shared with me the other day that I had, he went to a school that was predominantly white. It was a large public school. And he said that in one of his classes, and they were discussing, issues, political, whatever, but the teacher asked them to share what their plans were for their future. And he shared, something that he thought he wanted to do at the time. And he said, well, no, you're not going to do that. We'll just say that you'll be in jail. And he's the only Black person in the class, of course. And so he didn't say anything. And he's like, and everyone laughed except for one other person that was his friend. And, they talked about it afterwards, but he didn't want to tell me about it because he knew I would address it. But he just said that, it made him feel a certain way, in this day and age. It was only a few years ago. He was a junior or senior at the time. And so I think what Lanice is saying, I'm not sure, but the feeling behind that for me is that I think you have to be extreme. And, I know that they'll be exposed at some points, but it's something that you want to protect your child from. Not that you can, but you try,
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Anyone else wants to share here? We've got some time. I'm going to make sure that we stay with our time. So you're okay if you want to share.
So I think, you have to make what you feel is the best choices for your children, but in taking the extreme approach, do you start to create a bias at an early age for your child? If you're only exposing them to one culture or one skin color, are you inherently putting a bias on your child? I believe, and this is just my belief, I believe that exposure to all cultures is the best. That's just my approach to parenting, but everyone's going to parent their children different.
Was that a question for one of them, Amber, or was that just a statement?
It was, it is kind of a question I have. I would probably have to do some research on it, but it's like, if you do choose to take the extreme path, are you going to create a bias inherently in your child that maybe wouldn't have been there if you took the approach to expose them to all cultures instead of predominantly one?
Right. Did you all want to respond to that, Jeff? You want to say something?
Yeah, well, that was my question as well. I'm far from an expert on parenting. My kid's 30 days old. I'm just changing diapers now.
Congratulations, Jeff.
The first thing that crossed my mind was, at what point does a lack of exposure become just as dangerous as overexposure? Like I said, I don't have an answer to this, and I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong. I'm gonna have to cross these same bridges at some point. That's what crossed my mind when Lanice was talking, because I get her point of view. I absolutely do. And I understand where she's coming from, and what she's doing makes sense. It's not bad. I wonder at what point, kind of what Amber was saying is, does a lack of exposure become an issue? Rather than worrying about the overexposure. I'm sure there's a happy medium to anything, and I don't know what that is. That's what crossed my mind when it was talked about.
Sure. Haiti, you and I have talked about a few things. Did you want to add anything to this?
Sure. So I think one thing, as being a person of color, the exposure that we give our children also has to come with quality. What kind of exposure are we exposing them to? Are we exposing them to the stereotypical type of exposure of a certain community, of a certain culture? It's just not, okay, well, I'm going to expose them to this. I'm just going to expose them to Latino people. But how are you exposing them? Is it just because you're bringing in Mexican food and saying this is Mexican food and that's it? You have to go above and beyond that to ensure that if you want to show equality, you are showing quality in every single portion of it.
Yeah,
it's a really good point.
One of the things I love about the way that this session is designed, whenever I have the privilege of being able to facilitate these types of learnings, I demur. I don't usually choose the approach of a lecture because I'm not an expert. I don't consider myself that. And there's so many different perspectives that we can learn from. And I'm grateful for when we can share perspectives as opposed to, someone trying to correct me or, you know, do behavior modification. Hey, this is the way that you should do things. Like, because we can learn from so many different things. One of the things that we do encourage is for us all to do the best that we can with the information that's available, right? And so a part of this, remember, we do have an agenda. So please do not say, oh, I was a part of a session and there were no agendas. We just, no, we have an agenda. Our agenda first is to raise the awareness that biases exist, right? Even in our context, and to make sure that we are aware of those and that we can check them even in our clinical settings or whatever types of work that we're doing for Anthem. We wanted to do that assessment, but then I've got to craft next steps. So that's why you've got to do the homework and help me, you know, best resource you. So that's our agenda. But what we do is we encourage you to say, all right, once you've received this information, it's up to you now to figure out the best way to lead forward if you're a leader, or to move forward if you know your staff, or to interact, you know, with your interpersonal relationships, with your family, with your friends, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we are, but we're trusting that you will make the best decisions possible. So thank you so much for all of these perspectives. We're going to add another layer in just a second. I want to make sure that I'm not cutting anybody off. We're going to add another layer. It's going to get more difficult here in a second. It's going to get more difficult. And then you may see why some people do things that are seemingly extreme. And again, I only brought that up with regards to Lanice, because I knew that some people, having done this type of work for 20 years, over 20 years, I knew some people might see it that way. Everybody doesn't see it that way. And so again, thank you, Lanice, for allowing us to put you on the spot and for sharing. Okay. Any other thoughts? I didn't want to cut anybody off. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Here we go. Here's another layer. All I did was a simple search on Google's, being that that's one of the predominant search engines in America. And so what I did is I typed in the word white, and then I also typed in what color represents purity. That's all I did. And the first thing that popped up, I took a screenshot of it and I placed it in the presentation, and I want to share that with you. I'll do that now. Here you go. Tell me, similar to how we did in the exercise for the last couple of weeks, tell me if you see anything that could lead to bias.
There's
just even
go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, under color white, it says even the smallest drop of dye or smudge of dirt destroys the color, meaning it destroys the purity.
Yeah.
And it blatantly calls out in line 1 the opposite of black.
Yeah. All right. Quick pause. How many of you thought, so I'm going to stop sharing just for a second because I've got a question. We're going to come right back to it. How many of you thought with skepticism regarding the doll test? In other words, who was the facilitator? Was the facilitator in the room? Did they persuade the children to answer one way or another? Why weren't there other color dolls? Where were the white kids? Did anybody think with just a little bit? Because I encourage healthy skepticism. Okay, I see a hand.
Yes.
Thank you, Julie. Amber. Okay, yeah. So I think that that's good to have that healthy skepticism that, wait a second, am I being manipulated? Did you notice that the music changed when they started talking about, you know, the tough stuff and they were kind of wrestling with? Yeah. I've done video editing before. I participated in that kind of stuff. And so they can have an agenda, but wait a second. The reason why I'm pausing to bring that up is because even though I might think that, hey, sometimes when we see things, there's an agenda here, and I'm not sure if I can trust this little test. That sociological experiment started in the 1940s, as far back as we can research. It was that particular one that we showed was done in 2016 in Italy. We chose that because we wanted to expand the narrative beyond our local community, beyond the United States. We wanted to prove that there are issues of bias that are not just relegated to America. Okay, so you all remember, that's why we showed that. But even if you think somebody was trying to manipulate us, with regards to that little experiment, I'm going back to the definitions. I think Sharon pointed out that it says, even the smallest drop of dye or a smudge of dirt destroys the color. And
That's
then,
what they used to say back in the day, when it came to slaves, like even a drop of black makes them black. So that came back like through slave time. So that's what they used to say. So
Lanice is correct on that. We don't have time to really dig into it, but she is correct. And there are other issues related to colorism that perhaps if you want, you can send me an email and we can have, we can meet for a cup of coffee when this pandemic is over and the snow is over. But she's correct about that. And then I think maybe Amber pointed out that we have to make a choice. White is the opposite of black. That's the number one thing in the definition. So these aren't dolls. This is what's being given to children and adults. This is the definition. Something doesn't seem right to me. Do you see anything else?
This
Anybody?
is Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Number 2 in the definition brings up the belonging or denoting a human group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had to go all the way down. It looks like we've got to go through quite a few examples before we get to that. But it does point out that there is a skin color associated, or a human group, or what we call a people group, that's associated with this color.
I also see it even gives examples of plants and trees and wine and coffee and tea and bread and glass, and it's saying colorless, bleached milk with white flowers or pale color fruit. I think, that is even pointing there's all kinds of different trees out there. Not all of them have white flowers. It's just pushing that bias even more.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what I found when I did, and you can do this also, by the way.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh yes, who's that? Terry, go right ahead.
Terry, yes. And then if you notice in that definition under color white at the very bottom, I think someone mentioned this about the smallest drop or smudge of dirt destroys the color. But it's just interesting that they chose to look at that in a negative light. Like, why use the word destroys? Any bit of color destroys it. That's just an interesting word to me in that definition.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see something interesting, I also Googled black. Here's the next layer.
And the word transparent.
Yeah, I did see transparent. Was that you, Fallon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the word transparent, and transparency is always supposed to be positive, right?
Right.
What do we see here with black? Anything?
Definition 3, characterized by tragic or disastrous events causing despair or pessimism, full of anger or hatred,
Evil or
wicked. Yeah.
And then for it to say of any human group having dark colored skin. So that's basically saying if you have any color at all, which goes back to, I'm sorry, I forgot her name. That just was talking about how it goes back to slavery time, when they were saying if you have any drop of black in you, that you're black. And so that's basically confirming that thought, that if you're a human and you have any type of color in your skin, then you're black.
Yeah, which kind of goes to Gay's point, I think, potentially. Again, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but for her child, I believe you said it was your daughter, right, Gay, that considers you white, there's goodness associated with whiteness, according to a definition on crayons. When we're talking about colors, we're talking about things that are in a crayon box for kids.
Mhm.
White is good. Black is evil. You know, the one that really broke my heart, it almost took me to tears, even though I've gone through these definitions for years, where it says calamitous. That means it's a mistake. Now, here's the problem, and I can go on and on. We know that the color associated with dirt is brown, so you'll often hear Mexicanos, Hispanic people, Latinx associated as brown people, or Filipinos, people of Asian American descent or Asian descent that are Asian Americans. We will often hear them associated in America as people that are brown. They're also associated with colors that are derogatory, like yellow and red. You can do your own search. I did pull up a few things, but for the sake of time, so what I'm basically saying is there's a sociological construct that has been created to divide people groups. Because
Mhm.
what color do you think they say that I am? White or black? My skin. Huh? Let me show my screen here so you all can see my picture. What
Black.
color? I have to
Black.
choose, right? What color do you say that they would say that I am?
Wow.
They would say that I'm black, which means that I'm the opposite of white according to the definition. Now, these are definitions for everyone. Nobody's trying to cancel Google. These are just the definitions. You just pull up a dictionary. So they're saying I'm black. Now I have black hair. Some of it that's left is black hair, but my skin to me looks a lot closer to the color brown.
Mhm.
But they're telling me I have to make a decision. I'm black. And then when I look at the definition on black, here's the problem now. Watch this. When I look at the definition of black, it says that I'm miserable. So that's why I personally don't blame Lanice for trying to raise her. I'm not saying she's right or wrong, but I don't blame her if she thinks that the best thing is to reinforce positive images, black princesses. Because when she goes to school, I'm just telling you the truth here in America, when she goes to school, all of the princesses, not all of them, but usually they don't look like me. The princes don't look like me, I can assure you. They have hair at least, right? And then if I don't embrace my blackness, then I'm seen as disowning my own people. Because if someone said, "Oh, you're a black man," if I said, "No, I'm not a black man," then all of a sudden I've got identity issues. When I've got to fill out an application for a job, or I've got to fill out an application to get into a university, what color are you, white or black? I'm basically saying by default, when I put black, that I'm a mistake, but please let me into your university, according to the definition. How does that make you feel? I told you this is going to be a little bit more group therapy because there's some hard stuff that we had to kind of process today. So I tried to warn you, and I hope it's not too tough, but it certainly is difficult, right? How does that make
Claire,
you?
can I say something?
Please, India.
For your point. So I am the lightest person in my family. No one else, everyone else is darker than I am. I've always been the lightest. And growing up, my family never did it, but my friends and people that I met just from when I was little till now has always said like, "Oh, she's half white," or "Oh, she's mixed." And I'm not. I'm fully black. But because my skin is so light, they always would say, "Oh, she's." They would say I'm white, or they would say I'm half white because you know I'm I'm black, but my skin is light, so they just joke and say that I'm white or I'm half white, which it didn't bother me when I was younger, but as I've gotten older and the world that we live in and things like that, it would start to bother me because I'm like, no, I'm not white, I'm black, and I love being a black woman, but I don't I don't like being called white because I'm not white, I'm Black. And I just think it's interesting that by these definitions on the white side, it said a light skinned person, basically. But then it said for Black, a dark skinned person. Well, I'm a light skinned person, but I'm not white, I'm Black. So, according to the definitions, I guess I would be white according to the definitions, but I'm not. So I thought that was interesting that you brought that up because that's something that I lived through.
Yeah, and I've taken it down now, but I don't know if you noticed how quickly Black was associated. Maybe I can put it up real quick again. How quickly Black was associated with skin color. But if you look at the definition on white, you had to read through quite a few before you got to skin. But it's pretty high up there on the Black definition. I think I saw a hand. I'm not sure. Terry, was that you?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Okay, go ahead.
I think what India was saying, I mean, I hear what she's saying, but then it's all in the eye of the beholder because white people will consider you dark skinned. And we're light, they're light among Black people, but people of a lighter skin, it's all in the eye of the beholder. I've been through that too, because, I'll see, you see different colors of white, just like you see different colors of Black, and there's a spectrum. And in that spectrum, we're not in it at all. As far as from the predominant white perspective, it's, we're dark. You can have a heavy tan and be considered dark. So I think that I'm saying that to say that I think that definition was inclusive of I don't even know how to word it, but I think it was just inclusive of the white, anything that's darker than extremely pale white skin. I think that's what it meant.
And just to add to that, so that we can all be clear, the sociological construct, and what I'm meaning is there are a group of thinkers that have divided us, and just in case you think that the only division is between skin color, that's not true. We know that we are being divided by religion and by political ideologies, and we're being divided by gender. Guys should be able to make this much money, and ladies should be able to make, this much money. We're being divided by, our orientation, sexual orientation. Well, if you love this way, then these are the rights and the privileges you should have. And if you love this way, then these are the rights and privileges. You all see that this is not just skin. But we have decided, the Anthem leadership, hey, when we talk about bias, then we'll use a predominant theme, which is, the systematic racism. And so we've kind of, made our pivot on that, but it's not just skin color with regards to the divisions. Now, before I move on, Rose, you've been kind of quiet. Do you have anything that you would like to share? Rose, are you there? You'll have to unmute if you're still there.
No, I don't have anything to share. I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. I just want to give everyone an opportunity. Lori, how about you?
I thought it was interesting when you brought up the box of crayons. A good friend I used to work with as a labor and delivery nurse, her daughter used to call me and my children, they all played together, the peach people. The peach box of crayon, the peach color of the crayons. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And so I wanted you all to share before, we made the pivot to move on. To India's point and to Terry's point, the colors that are associated with our skin are far more than just the shade. That's a whole different class on colorism. The colors are associated with our ethnic origin. Mm-hmm. So if you are of European descent, then you're suggested to be in the category of white. But then if you are from one of these racial minority places like Latin America or Africa, or et cetera, then you're categorized as Black, particularly if your skin is brown like mine. And so then the construct, which is a farce, it's not true, suggests that clary is bad because his skin has a permanent tan. He's bad. But someone else who doesn't have the permanent tan, even though my friends try to get tans during the summertime, right? They're good. And we know that's not true because we can look at something just as simple as this. I mean, this is how I teach children. Let me know if you can see this particular screen here with the eggs. Can y'all see that with the chicken?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, depending on what grocery you go to, you may actually pay more for a brown egg or for a white egg. But there's one thing that I've found in my research. It doesn't matter how much you pay or where these chickens were laying their eggs. When you crack the inside, it's the same thing. Brown eggs and white eggs produce the same yolk. There's no increased value based on the color of the shell. And it's the same with us. It's all a farce. How did we get our skin color? We got our skin color, I think, did I stop sharing? Great. We got our skin color based on our ancestors, those that migrated to and from tropical regions close to the equator tens of thousands of years ago. If they were closer to those areas, then their descendants, such as me, we have darker skin because our skin is based on melanin. And those that migrated to and from areas that were not tropical, away from the equator, their skin is lighter. So if my family starts migrating to other regions in tens of thousands of years, then our people, just based on simple anatomy, biology, and physiology, it's pretty simple. The skin color changes, just like if you sit in the sun, you're gonna get darker. And if you do that for thousands of years, then that's what your descendants will look like. That's how we get our skin color. But to be divided by that, it's a farce. So one last thing that we have to do today, this is the last layer that I need to share, and that is the homework that we did on Dr. Seuss. So I'm going to share that now, unless there are any questions. Any questions? We're good? All right, if you do have thoughts, by all means, go ahead and put them in the chat. I will continue to review those. And remember, this is a two session process. So a group therapy today, and then it's going to be even a little bit more intense next week. So let's take a look at this. Now, I ask you to do your own research, so I can never be put in a position of telling you what to think. I'm going to share with you as best I can some unbiased news clippings, 2 news clippings here regarding the Dr. Seuss incident.
I feel like it's pretty messed up, to be honest. So.
Fans of Dr. Seuss are disappointed after a racist cartoon has come to light.
That cartoon, drawn for a magazine by the famous San Diegan Theodore Geisel, was recently put up for auction. Tennis reporter Michael Chen went to the biggest Dr. Seuss collection in the world and uncovered more of his drawings from the same magazine.
At UCSD, outside the library that bears his name, a statue in tribute to Dr. Seuss. But could this cartoon now chip away at the image of the beloved author? On campus,
I'm just sad.
These are the sounds.
Wow.
Of the nostalgia of childhood.
I love his books.
Being tarnished.
Just paint a little bit of his image in my mind.
All thanks to this image, a 4-panel cartoon by the then 25-year-old Theodore Geisel, which appeared in the political magazine Judge in 1929.
I feel like it's pretty messed up.
It depicts scenarios in which rich men can purchase items to make their lives more difficult. A sign reads, "Take home a high-grade N-word for your woodpile." While some we talk to stop short of outrage.
You gotta look in context of the time that, back then.
All express disappointment.
This is something that I would not expect him to write.
We wanted to scour the rest of his work and went inside the Geisel Library, which contains the largest collection of Dr. Seuss illustrations, some 15,000 pieces. They are locked in a back room, and the school declined to allow us in. On the library website, we found several of his drawings from Judge magazine. A source familiar with the collection says none of the illustrations contain the N-word or blackface. Geisel, a liberal Democrat.
I would not eat them here or there.
And the best-selling children's author of all time spent the last 4 decades of his life in La Jolla. As for the cartoon and auction,
Not a single bid? Well, I think that's a good thing, to be honest.
the auction just wrapped up. No one made the minimum $20,000 bid. Most we talked to call that the best possible ending to this Dr. Seuss story. Michael Chen, 10 News.
USD declined to make a statement for us. Geisel's publisher has also remained quiet.
We're told the online auction will be kept up for a while in case of a post-auction bid.
Concern over content. 6 Dr. Seuss books pulled from the shelves. Dr. Seuss Enterprises announcing today those books will no longer be sold, will no longer be published because of racist imagery. For years, critics have said that Seuss books contain harmful stereotypes about Black and Asian people. The decision also comes on Read Across America Day. It's a Dr. Seuss birthday tradition, but the National Education Association announcing it's turning away from Seuss books and instead focusing on more diverse ones. Here's CNBC's Scott Cohn.
He is among the most beloved
into a tissue and throw it out quick.
and prolific children's authors of all time.
Do you know it?
Among the books pulled on what would have been Theodore Seuss Geisel's 117th birthday, the very first Dr. Seuss book. And to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, published in 1937, over a stereotypical drawing of an Asian man. 5 other titles gone too, effective immediately. These books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong, says a statement from Dr. Seuss Enterprises, echoing critics.
Shouldn't we be uplifting books for audiences for children that celebrate the beauty and the diversity of all human beings?
Geisel himself addressed the controversy before his death in 1991. That's the way things were 50 years ago, he once said. In later editions of Mulberry Street, he toned down the Asian character's image, but it wasn't enough. In 2017, Dr. Seuss Enterprises removed a mural with the drawing from the Dr. Seuss Museum. Pulling the books, the organization says, is part of a broader commitment. But others call this another example of cancel culture.
I mean, nobody can deny it. We all know a rhyme in our head from Dr. Seuss from our childhood.
Pediatrician Diane Hess thinks a better approach would be to keep publishing the books, but with a disclaimer.
This book was written in this year, a long time ago, and it has some stereotypes that we would like to change.
You may not be able to order these books from the publisher anymore, but this is America, and there is always eBay, where a 1937 edition of Mulberry Street is listed at this hour, just went up to about $4,400. And the current bid on a new one, last we checked, around $150. Last week at this time, some of these titles were going for as little as $4.
Okay. We have reached the end of today's session. I wanted to do something similar to what we did last time, give you something provocative to think through as we'll address it next week. If you have any initial comments, I'm going to leave the chat open and you can type those in if you desire. I'm also going to stay online for a few more minutes if you want to kind of chat after our session is over with. Let me give you the homework real quick and then I'll turn it over to Haiti. Remember, we want you to go ahead and reacquaint yourself with the Dr. Susan Moore incident that we sent with the pre-work, and then begin thinking through so that you can bring it next time how you can be best resourced, you and the people that are in your sphere. Any questions for me? Okay, again, if you have some initial thoughts on what you just saw, please put them in the chat. I'm going to stick around after the session. Haiti, do you have anything for us?
No, so make sure you bring your homework or do your homework, I guess, for the next session. And then make sure that you are going to be know that you're going to be on video again next week. So be camera ready and all that. Had a couple of those comments. So yeah, we'll see you all next week. Thank you all for being here and for participating.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
I can stay on if you like.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you have some thoughts? Thank you again for sharing and, and being vulnerable. I know that couldn't have been easy to kind of share your parenting.
Yeah, like I've been doing a lot of research when because it's a scary world we live in. So like just because of things like that, she can easily Google search when she gets older and see that her skin is the hated skin and it's bad. So like just giving her a strong foundation before she even gets to the point where she is exposed to that. Of course, she sees white people because we live in Avon, of course, but like I just want her to have a strong foundation. Like I want her to love her skin and her hair and stuff. So it's very hard as a mother to make sure I filter what she watches. Because if you actually pay attention to children's cartoons, some of them are horrible. They are horrible. They're very horrible. Like I even listen, I told my sister the other day, I said, you should really watch of what my niece is watching. She's 9. She watches Barbie. It's a cartoon version of Barbie, and it's 2 different types. And one of the cartoon Barbie is so vain. And it's very hurtful. She's very vain. The world revolves around her. And I said, you should really watch this cartoon, even though I know Barbie's white. But besides that, I said, it's really putting like women in a bad light because she's very vain. It's all around about clothes, and her friends basically worship her. And I said, you should really watch it. And she did her own research and watched, and she was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna like cut that cartoon out because it's kind of really bad. And I was like, yeah, like you just watch, you have to pay attention to what your kids watch. And then with the Dr. Seuss thing, me and my one of my best friends was talking about it. He told me about it and said, I'm just I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised that it took this long.
Yeah. Yeah, I found an actual research study where they went through all of his books from 2019.
Really?
And I mean, they figured of the characters in there, I mean, there were no women. It was all, white men. Even when you look at, I mean, they're saying the Cat in the Hat is supposed to be a Black person, but because he was having so many problems with, Black and white people, he made his characters, and she was supposedly an elevator operator in his building, and that's where he got the characteristics from her and her skin color. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, it made me more and more depressed about my childhood the more I read it, because as I was growing up, only saw the Cat in the Hat on the surface. Like she said, everybody knows 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, and I do not like them, Sam. I am. Those because, or at least I do, because those were the first books that I was exposed to.
It was the very first book as well.
Yeah, but it made me I had to go back and relook everything because I didn't. Yeah, it was very, very disheartening to read that whole study.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't surprised that on the first time that I took the Harvard assessment, my predominance was biased in favor of European Americans. I wasn't surprised when I go back and look at all the things for the 40 years I've been on Earth that I've been fed, including Dr. Seuss, he was my favorite author, growing up. I mean, it's just it's nuts. Wow. One of the things that I want to suggest is they mentioned in that one of the clips that cancel culture was particularly something that was doing this to Dr. Seuss. We know the difference between cancel culture and the enterprise, the Dr. Seuss enterprise, voluntarily looking at the books, the ones that are not selling, and they chose to remove those books. So it wasn't a public outcry. They weren't being picketed, as far as I know. So there is a differentiation. We got to be careful the things that are fed to us, because we'll think, oh, they're trying to cancel Dr. Seuss. This was a voluntary measure by the enterprise. So.
Yeah.
I thought that the young girl, it looked like she was a college age student who said you have to take into account like the time. I thought that was refreshing, that she was not just wanting to cancel the whole and make it seem like it's because of a public outcry. Obviously, those books should be pulled. I don't agree with the woman who said there should be a disclaimer and they should continue to make it. But that's my opinion. And I felt it made me a little bit more reassured when the younger people were saying, no, you don't want to cancel everything. I don't know.
Hey, Lori,
There's
that's
so much
a
of that.
tough question. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say, I agree with what Lori's saying. I think we've gotten to this point culturally where when something offends us, we automatically, the solution is to get rid of it. And I think that it was refreshing to kind of see the kids, well, I guess young adults, whatever you want to call them, saying, no, you got to look at it from the when it was written and what the time period is. And the parallel I made right away is every couple of years, somebody tries to tell you that they're going to ban Huckleberry Finn because it's got the N-word in it. And you also have to understand that Huckleberry Finn was written in the 1840s and it was a different time. And I think that you have to look at it from the perspective of when it was written. And it's more about understanding that time period than it is about, oh, it's bad. Well, it wasn't bad. That's the wrong way to say it. It's not saying it wasn't bad at the time, but culturally, we looked at things much differently 170 years ago.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for Dr. Seuss to some extent. I mean, if you've ever done any research on Theodore Geisel going way back,
Was it definite
he wrote
racist?
some really racist crap back in the
He was a definite racist.
in 30s when he was doing political cartoons, particularly on World War II. I did a real deep dive on it in a college course, and looking at his editorial cartoons from the 30s and the 40s are compared to what he ended up doing later on in life is fascinating.
Right.
And then I don't remember the woman, Sharon, I think it was Sharon, where she said she'd look back on him later on, but she didn't notice that as a kid. And you know what? I'd be willing to bet most kids, especially the real young ones, have no idea that there's these parallels and that have no idea that there's these representations. They see a cat in a hat as a cat in a hat. So at what point does that become harmful? I don't know. It's for people with more degrees than I have to tell me when that becomes harmful to children, because if they enjoy the story and they're literally looking at fish and cats, good for them. Like, let them enjoy the story.
You've got some pretty interesting decisions to make here coming up, Jeff. You said 30 days.
30 days, yeah.
30 days. And, I applaud Lanice and others. I think Terry and Gay, for trying to, foster an environment that they believe is the best for their children. This is a very difficult world to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
Agreed.
And, I found it interesting, and I don't know if anybody watches The Bachelor, but I just started watching it. Anyway, there was a situation where one of the contestants, I guess you should say, she was at an antebellum party, and I guess the conversation came up, and the host, I can't think of his name right now, but he kind of went back and forth with one of the contestants earlier, who was a Black woman, and it was a big deal. You all may know about it. He's no longer hosting, but it was interesting, the referral, when they referenced, well, antebellum, I'm sure they were just out having a good time and it was okay in 2018. And she said, it's never okay. Well, I think that's true to some degree. Like, it may have been accepted by many, but did it really make it okay? Even with Huck Finn, with the N-word, it may not have been offensive to all, but what if, it's still offensive? And I get it. There's some things that are classic, and I'm not necessarily a cancel culture person either, but in regards to the Dr. Seuss books, when there are kids that are reading it, and, as it Lanice, when she's not choosing to not expose her child at this early age, I get it, because there are so many things that start to form in these minds of these children. It's like everything imprints on their brains. So there may be some things you may not want to expose them to early on, but then, kind of slowly let up the gate, and then let them build that self-confidence. And then you can slowly start to expose them, and in a parental guidance type of way, when they're being exposed, and you can help them through this experience. But I don't necessarily think in cancel culture, there's like a country singer too, I can't think of his name, who said the N-word, dropping somebody off at home one day on his own time, and everyone's like, well, cancel him out. I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't feel that you should cancel someone out because something happens in their own personal time and we will all be canceled to some degree. But I do think that when you're talking about exposing children, like in these Dr. Seuss books, because I never knew it either. He was like one of my favorites. And then as I'm learning this, I'm like, I'm appalled, to see like some of the history with Dr. Seuss. And I'm like, man, I don't like Dr. Seuss anymore, but
So
it's just
here's the greatest question, and so you all have to figure it out and bring the answer next time, right? You have to figure out how to eradicate racism, and then you gotta
yeah, okay, we'll work on that one.
But go ahead.
Can I say one last thing? I was listening to what Jeff said, but I also want to play like devil's advocate with that. Like you have to look at how our world is, and it's acceptable for Dr. Seuss and whoever, just to give an example, to be racist and like a little bit of racism here, a little bit of racism here. And like everyone's like, it's okay, like it's just to have a little bit in the book and to children to learn and have that like disclaimer or whatever. And like African Americans are supposed to be okay with it. And we kind of like push things under the rug. We're not too like outraged about it. But when it comes to someone offending the Caucasian community or the white community, I feel like he would have probably been canceled, to be honest. Like he would have been canceled. I forgot the example that I had. But like just with Billie Holiday, a song that offended the white community. She had to go through so much because of a song, but they liked her music, but they wanted to cancel her completely because of that one song. And it was just one song. So if we did that with just one book, the African American community, and cancel Dr. Seuss, like are they going to get mad at us for doing that? Because I feel like back in history has shown that the white community cancels anything that offends them just like that.
Yeah. And how can someone not be upset, or I'm going to use a loaded term. How can someone not be bitter and angry if they're having to deal with this all the time? I just want to go to work and do my job and then come home and be with my family. But I've got to be barraged with these images. The Greg McDermott thing with Creighton, if you haven't researched that, him telling his basketball players, hey, stay on the plantation and we're all going to get this together, right? Or, what's going on with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry and with, whatever's happening with the royal palace, like, based on color. I mean, these are some negative things that are going on. The young man or the older gentleman that had to resign, that was the director of the museum there in Indiana, because he put some racially charged terms in the job description. I mean, we can go on and on. It's not just Dr. Seuss, but sometimes it's just too much. So where do we cancel someone versus where we say, okay, this is okay? One last example, and you guys can share, or we can conclude. Seinfeld was one of my favorite shows. I don't know if you all remember years ago. I can't remember his name, but I think he's the funniest character on Seinfeld, the tall guy. Kramer. Yep. Kramer did some stand-up comedy, and I don't know if Kramer was drunk or what.
Yeah.
But Kramer repeatedly said the N-word, and when people called him out on it, he went in even further, like N-word, 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 and so they basically canceled him. Like, okay.
Kramer also stepped on the Puerto Rican flag in one of his episodes.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that was never like aired on television, but it was like uncovered years later.
Wow.
And like the show never got canceled, even though that always happened.
So maybe. Yeah. So maybe the line of demarcation is if someone shows remorse, maybe. I don't know, because it didn't seem like he was remorseful at all.
No.
But I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite actor on that particular show. And then all of a sudden, what am I going to do now? Who do we cancel and who do we not? Anyways,
I think showing remorse is a big part of it. I think realizing you did something you shouldn't have done, and why you shouldn't have done it is a big part of it. My problem with the whole cancel culture thing is when we're digging things up in people's pasts from 20, 30, 40 years ago and holding their feet to the fire now over something they may have done to their children or young adults. I don't know that there's any of us that don't have something in our past that we could be in trouble for because we said or did.
So Jeff, I just want to push you here because this is not easy. This is not easy. If it was easy, like I said, we just send an email and we wouldn't need a course. We wouldn't need a session.
Sure.
So based on what you just said, I would agree with you that we're all, this is how I say it, we're all better than the worst thing that we've done. Okay. Especially if there's something from 30 years ago or 20 years ago. I think that's what I was hearing you say. Don't let me put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I mean, from your past, I mean, it depends. I'm talking more of, I don't have an example in my head, but like when we hear of like a politician or somebody in pop culture that did something at 21 in college when they were drunk, and you're like, okay, fine, we've all done stupid things, but why are we holding them accountable for this now, 40 years later, or whatever it is?
Right. Back in the 80s,
saying that what they did wasn't wrong. It's just, at what point how much do we punish them now for what they did then? I mean, that's a tough question.
That's a tough question. Now, using what you just said, Bill Cosby would not have to be in jail at 80 years old because these are crimes that he committed predominantly. There was one issue where there's some question about it, but predominantly these were things that happened in the 70s, in the 80s. These are 30-year-old issues.
Right. But what I would argue is there is a pattern of repeated and multiple repeated issues. I'm talking about the one-off cases where, like, I don't even like I know somebody made reference to that country singer. I only vaguely know the story. It was a one thing and whatever, and I don't know the story, so I can't really comment on it, but like, I'm talking about like the one-time thing where they find one thing in your past, or Bill Cosby's I don't think anybody condones what Bill Cosby did.
Okay. So Jess, please just do me one favor. I'm asking you, continue to do what you're doing. You are trying to help us find solutions. Okay, please never stop doing that. I do think that there's hope versus hopelessness. I choose hope. So please continue to do that. All right. I'm only pushing back a little bit, not really pushing back, but I'm just giving another perspective, because I'm a lawyer, right? So based on what you're saying, repeated patterns, okay? I'm the first person to raise my hand to say what Bill Cosby did was wrong. He shouldn't have done it. You got to be held accountable. But plain devil's advocate, if we're talking about repeated patterns and things that are right and not right, and you got to be held accountable, we could use that same standard for George Washington. George Washington allowed slavery. George Washington knew full well what happened to the indigenous people and the Native Americans. There was no apology. These folks were raped. There was genocide. I mean, it was mass murder. That's how our country was founded. But nobody that I know is going to say, let's rip down George Washington statues. Let's take him out of the book. So I'm just saying, again, my disclaimer, do not be discouraged. Continue to help us find solutions. What are you all saying?
I said, or cancel Columbus Day. We still celebrate Columbus Day. And he was a rapist.
Yeah. He was a genocide. He committed genocide. A lot of things.
Yes.
People. He brought diseases over. He eradicated literally full populations of indigenous people in various different areas, not only the United States of America.
So again, Jeff, don't choose hopelessness, because there will be a time when you'll be like, oh my gosh, well, none of us are good enough. Please just continue.
I think the biggest thing I think everybody needs to take away from something like this is that literally no situation is black and white, and there's always this weird gray area, and it's navigating that gray area. I see where you're going with George Washington, and I'm not going to defend anybody having slaves. But I will also go down to say, again, we're talking 250 50 odd years ago, give or take, and the country was a much different place then, and the world was a much different place then. I'm not saying it was right. Clearly that right has been, or that wrong has been, no, I wouldn't say it's been righted, but things have changed. And the same would go for Columbus. Now with Columbus, I mean, I got nothing I can defend on him. I don't understand why we as a country defend his holiday at all, and statues of him. The guy stumbled into our country and killed a bunch of people. I don't. Battles. It's 400 years ago. It's not on my priority list. I think there's much more pressing current issues than that. Do I think it's wrong? Sure. But I think, again, you got to go back to every single one of these things that we brought up, for the most part, is in the gray area. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that'll defend Bill Cosby. It's not going to be me, but I'm sure there's somebody that sees something in there to defend. And maybe you could defend that his show on its own, brought stuff out and joy to people and whatever. But I don't know. That's before my time.
It did. The Cosby Show, I would say the Cosby Show did show African Americans in a successful light, because we have Good Times that showed poor Black community struggling, making $50. I don't even think he made $50 a week. And that's all we saw. And they lived in the projects. And then we hit the Cosby Show, and he's an OBGYN and she's a Black attorney, and they're middle class. Like, that was amazing to see on TV, even though I was a 90s baby, so it came before me. But
so Lenice, then my question would be, and I don't know the right answer here. So they obviously did some terrible stuff, and is now paying for it, probably too late for it, but he's being tried for it and paid for it. Does that mean you can't cancel the Cosby Show? It's not on the air anymore, but like, I think even
it's on. I actually watched it the other day.
I mean, it's not new anymore. It's nothing to cancel, but like in syndication, I think it still provides. I mean, I don't. Do you cancel that because he's bad?
I haven't canceled the Cosby Show. I don't. As far as the allegations, I'm not completely sure of like everything he's done, because he had a cast, like what me and my boyfriend go back and forth. We have a lot of race conversations, and we have a lot of conversations about who to cancel, who not to cancel. I guess I give you an example. I've canceled completely R. Kelly. If anyone knows about everything R. Kelly has done, I think it's more recent and it's more like hard evidence. He's gone to trial before. He's had allegations before, and I think Cosby, it kind of came up. I don't know. Like, I can't defend him. He is an old man. Yeah. He's an old man. So yeah. I just don't know. I don't know. R. Kelly is
well, I just meant it as an example of like, because clearly I can look at the Cosby Show and go, I don't see anything wrong here. I mean, yeah. It's a time period piece of what, the 80s, early 90s, I think. But other than that, like, it's pretty, I don't have a lot of bad to say about it.
No, it's pretty positive.
Where do you separate the man from his work, kind of thing? Almost like, Clary was talking about Kramer. Like, well, okay, had that happened at the height of Seinfeld, I think it happened after Seinfeld was over. But like, had that happened at the height of Seinfeld, would they have canceled Seinfeld because of it? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But I wanna play devil's advocate here, because we want to talk about recent things. So I want to bring up Justice Kavanaugh. He had cases against him about sexual assault and allegations, and yet he is now sitting on our court.
He is sitting. Yep.
So if we are going to be talking about canceling somebody because of something they've done in the past, then we need to actually like truly have those conversations and really put somebody in a chair and truly question them, instead of letting them bypass something that not just one woman came forward for, but multiple women did.
Right.
And yet, and still he is now sitting on our Supreme Court.
Right.
Making some of the biggest decisions that affect us as citizens of this country.
So what determines who in that light, Haiti, what determines who gets canceled and who doesn't, to Jeff's point, because we had a President Trump, he had multiple allegations against him. He's non-apologetic for all of his, racism comments, but he was celebrated, and then you have a Bill Cosby with this same stuff, but less, who is in jail now. So how do we determine who we look at as, okay, yeah, he was a horrible man, and this person wasn't a horrible man?
I think it comes down to race. I think it really does goes back to race. Yeah, it's race. Because you think of, I can give you a good example of race and who got murdered in the media. Michael Vick. You would think that he committed murder, and rape, but everything that he got canceled for, he was slaughtered in the media. People wanted to cancel him. They wanted to kill him, literally threatened his life because of dogs. And I know it's dog lovers and everything, but this man he had to spend time in jail like he killed someone. Yeah. And it was all because of dogs, and I think it's not even because of dogs, it's because he was an African American. He was Black.
So,
and I think that's why Bill Cosby is sitting there, because he's Black.
So we've got to wrap up because I've got to go to another meeting. But I'm gonna push you on this. First of all, Terry, you can't take my question and say, hey, who should we cancel? But of course, I'm teasing you. Here's what I push you. Is it really just race? And the reason why I say that is because, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, because Dr. Martin Luther King is seen as one of the great moral leaders of our country and of our time. But there isn't much dispute that there were alleged and probably true extramarital affairs. And so how can we hold is it just race? Because if it was just race, then we would be canceling, Dr. King as well. But just about everybody on both sides of the political spectrum hold Dr. King up as a great moral leader and someone that we can espouse to. No one says, oh, well, some people, but no reasonable person in America says, oh, we can't quote Dr. King and we can't show his videos. I wonder if a lot of what Dr. King has done has been co-opted, not just because of race, but also because it affirms power structures and classism, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to push a little bit, just devil's advocate. I wonder if it's all just skin color. So I've got to run to another meeting. We will continue this conversation next week. Sharon, anybody, did you want to say anything else before we conclude today? I don't want to cut anyone off.
No, I'm just.
Everybody good? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. This is the first time we've done this, by the way. Haiti and I, we debrief. But it's the first time that you all joined us. So thank you for doing this, and you all have a good rest of the day.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.